we need to fix two problems. We need to avoid refetching the data client side, so we can't actually do all of this. We also need to avoid throwing away the initial DOM that gets mounted through the server render. And that's happening in the DOM renderer because we're passing initial data as empty collection. So to render the React application client side and have it sync with the DOM coming from the server side, we need to render the React application here with actual data. So we need access to the data here. So we can't pass an empty initial data object. Now, this initial data is something that we already fetched server side. So we need to somehow communicate this initial data that exists server side to the DOM renderer as well. So we can go simply fetch it from the server, but that requires a network operation. Instead of doing that, there is a simple trick that we can do. In the server renderer, instead of just exposing the initial markup, we can also expose the initial data. Let's do that. So in here, I'm going to return two things. I'm going to return the initial markup, which is what I had before, but I'm also going to return the initial data, just like that. So now if I go to the server code in here, the result of awaiting on the server rendered is going to be an initial content, but that's going to be an actual object. So I'm actually going to just spread this object here to have both initial markup and initial data available in the EJS template. Now I have initial markup, but I also have initial data, which I can expose with a script tag, just like that. So we'll put this directly on the window object. So initial data is the initial data coming from the server variable in here. But to get this to work, we need to JSON stringify it. This is just a requirement here in EJS, but the idea is to have the actual initial data object exposed to the client side as a global variable. So now the client side in here can use this initial data directly from the window objects. So window.initialData. And we can test our theory now by re-rendering the application. I see the content and I don't see any warnings from React. Why? Because now we're fetching the data once. In fact, we're delivering the data using the window object right here. You can see the data globally available on the window object, and that's the exact object that the DOM renderer used to pre-render the React application and figured out that it needs to do nothing because it's the exact same markup.